You're listening to the DCAU Review, hosted by Cal and Liam. Streaming on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and at DCAUreview.com. Now, here's today's episode.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 141 of the DCAU Review. I am one of your hosts, Cal, and with me, as he is each and every week, my brother, friend, and the gentleman that runs our Twitter page. That's right, it's Liam. Liam, welcome to another edition of the DCAU Review.
Well, we got a weird one today, folks. Hello? But more importantly, this is going to be a weird one.
That is, put it nicely, I'd say. I think when we looked at the episodes that we were going to cover for this month, if you listed them out, I would say that looking at them, one would assume that Mixius Pixelated would be the weirdest, especially after we reviewed that one.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that the episode that we're reviewing today, Liam, may indeed have beat that as far as just weirdness factor.
Yeah, it's truly bizarre, and unlike Mixie, we don't have a villain that can whose powers are bending reality and completely breaking the rules of the format of the series.
Yes, we're supposed to understand and believe this is just like,
could happen to anybody.
Yeah, it could happen to anybody. We, of course, are covering this week the episode Monkey Fun, as we mentioned we would be covering last week. And this, of course, introduces us to the one and only appearance of Titano, who is, of course, a Silver Age Superman villain, reoccurring foil sort of character that was brought here into the DCAU and mercifully was only used one time, but we'll get into that as we discuss our plot in just a moment here. Liam, I know you have the IMDb synopsis, and this is one that I'm greatly looking forward to as you deliver that for us for this week's episode, Monkey Fun, which did originally debut on September 27th, 1997, putting us just a few months shy here of its 24th anniversary.
Absolutely, and this is for the episode Monkey Fun, which was written by Evan Dorkin and Sarah Dyer, so we know who to blame. Directed by Kurt Gaeta, with music by Lolita Ritmanis, and animation by Coco/Dong Yang. And that synopsis reads as such. A beloved monkey... Oh, this is so dumb, I'm sorry. Alright. A beloved monkey companion of...
Come on, be professional. Let's go.
That's all right. Take 3. We're going to get it this time. And then we're going to break for lunch. Not really. A beloved monkey companion of Lois returns from years of suspended animation in space, only to become big trouble on Earth.
I see what they did there. That was... Kudos for wordplay there. I like that.
To the credit, it's a good synopsis.
Yeah, excellent.
It was just, I couldn't get through the words beloved monkey companion.
That is quite a strange way of phrasing it, as we also recognize later that Professor Hamilton also refers to it as a very strange relationship. So let's kick off our plot description here, Liam, as we give our scores for this week's episode. Yes. So yeah, we are.
So we open with childhood trauma.
Yeah, that opening scene is so freaking traumatic. We learn that Lois Lane was, of course, I guess this is the first mention or sort of reveal that her dad was in the military, which I feel is a pretty like true to character origin story. Lois's dad being in the military, maybe, I don't know. I feel like that's something that could be like have just not been created for this. But anyway, so her dad's in the military, and she grew up apparently playing with military experiments as pets. And
we brought them home, gave them names, let your children bond with them, and then you take them away and you shove them on a rocket.
What?
Terrible father Sam Lane is.
He's right up there with Mayor Hill as like worst dad in DCAU history, right?
It's a murderer's row of terrible DCAU dads.
So Sam Lane allows his daughter and daughters to form attachments to this space monkey that they're going to launch. They know they're going to launch into space.
Right.
And as he's being traumatically ripped away moments after playtime ends, between, by the way, this dangerous chimpanzee who, if you know anything about chimps, I'm pretty sure one of the things they're most famous for is ripping people's faces off.
Yes.
So the fact that you let your 2 8 and then, less than 8-year-old daughters play with this chimp is just, like, unsupervised is just very interesting.
Just awful.
Yeah, he's a terrible dad. So as the scientists that are going to launch said space monkey into space come to tear him away, the monkey screaming out in terror, and the children are also just like, I don't know. This is something out of like an 80s, like weird 80s movie, like where the kids are the main protagonists and they're like being traumatized, but it's just like storytelling technique. Very strange way to tell this story.
Lois, honey, it's time.
No, I won't let you take him.
But Lois, you knew one day Titano would have to leave us. He has to go on his mission now.
Why can't you send Lucy into space instead? I'll go.
It's Titano's job, honey. That's why he was able to come live with us.
Colonel Lane, I'm sorry, but...
I understand. Go ahead, gentlemen. Don't worry, honey. Daddy promises Titano is going to be just fine.
Absolutely. So yeah, the shuttle launches and then immediately malfunctions.
But don't worry, the kids are there to witness
That's
that
right.
too.
Yeah, Sam Lane brought his 2 small children to witness this monkey get lost in space.
Because nothing has ever gone wrong with a space launch.
Right.
Come
on,
on,
it didn't
man.
blow up on the ground. It got into space before it blew up.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so flash forward some 20 years later, and Superman is destroying some asteroids that are about to hit a space station, and these asteroids seem to be infused with this strange blue gas. Mm-hmm. And after a brief action beat there of him destroying all the asteroids, he finds this shuttle. And wouldn't you know it, a still alive and sleeping Titano inside. He takes him back to Star Labs. Lois reunites with him. The Titano seems to perk up when Lois enters the room and seems to remember her.
How's he doing?
Well, he's alive, and that's a miracle. But he's been lethargic since he woke up.
You'd think after 20 years he'd be a little hungry.
According to the records, he's twice as heavy as he was when they launched him.
Titano! Remember me? Lolo?
Lolo?
I was 8, okay? Oh, my pretty little baby, you do remember. Oh, yes, you do.
So Superman, the hero of the piece, as it might imply based on this being called Superman, and a doctor, perhaps multiple scientists, decide that the best course of action to deal with this monkey who was lost in space for 20 years, still alive.
Inexplicably still alive.
Yes, and they mention that his mass is like twice what it was when he left, despite not eating for 20 years. They're just like, Lois, take him home. Take him on home to your apartment, and we'll just see what happens. And wouldn't you know it, the gas, apparently, once it's returned to Earth's atmosphere, whatever the gas has infused into begins to grow, and we get giant bacteria that attacks the professors at Star Labs that Superman has to deal with. And then he realizes, well, if the bacteria was exposed to the gas and it grew, that must mean Titano will grow as well.
What are those things?
Bacteria. They must have been trapped in the jars with the meteor gas. The exposure to our atmosphere somehow caused this tremendous growth. Oh, good heavens.
Titano.
Lois, you've got to get back here, right now!
Jimmy, I haven't been gone 20 minutes. Just throw him a banana.
I don't think that's gonna be enough.
Hello? Jimmy? Hello? Back to the monkey house.
While Lois has gone off to try to take a little time for herself and left that poor boy, Jimmy Olsen, in charge of Titano. Titano, the second Lois's door closes, there's no way she was even out of the apartment yet. He immediately grows like 3 sizes, and
mind you, she's living in this like penthouse suite apartment of this very beautiful that Titano has just absolutely destroyed in the time that, because first of all, how did she get a monkey into this like very ritzy apartment? Do you think she dressed him up like in a trench coat and like got to get him past security?
Kids movie with it,
right? Exactly. Like Dunstan checks in, he's wearing human clothes.
Absolutely,
just their friend. Like what is happening here? So they bring him upstairs, and he's destroyed her apartment. He's clearly out of control, and Lois takes that opportunity to dump him onto Jimmy Olsen.
Right, and this is when he's just a regular insane wild animal. This is before he begins to grow. Tosses Jimmy out a window. Lois nearly responsible for her friend and colleague's death. But Superman gets there just in time, and then Titano... There's always this moment, we were talking about this off the air, in like a Godzilla movie or any giant monster movie where the monster attacks, there's calamity, the police or the military are involved, it's this big action piece, and then at some point the monster somehow disappears.
Right.
And you're like, how? Like, every time it was walking, the ground was shaking, but somehow no one is able to figure out, didn't leave any giant footprints or wreckage in its path when it disappeared this time.
Yes.
But yes, Titano gets away, he goes down to the docks, where he's confronted by Bibbo.
Yes.
And the police, who decide to shoot him with very tiny darts.
Yeah, of course. It's good. This now, like, 3-story high gorilla or chimpanzee is going to be affected by these tiny little darts that are designed to knock out, like, a regular-sized chimp.
So, more havoc is wreaked. Superman tries to kind of treat Titano with kid gloves, but he gets away. At which point, Superman tells Lois, "Your monkey friend is going down." Which, I don't know, you need to phrase it like that, man. Like, it's kind of... She's going through a lot. Maybe you didn't need to rub it in, but...
I'm sorry, Lois, but your monkey friend's going down.
Don't hurt him! He's just a baby! Okay, a really big baby.
And yeah, there's like a brief fight, but meanwhile, worst dad of all time, Sam Lane, returns with Beppo, the monkey doll that plays Pop Goes the Weasel, which was a calming song that Titano liked pre-turning into a giant ape. And they are able to use that after some more fighting between him and Superman at like a fairgrounds to finally calm the beast long enough to gas him and take him off to some island somewhere. And that's where our episode ends. They just
mercifully
they just leave him on an island in somewhere in the ocean. We don't know if it's within like the United States. We don't know if this is Atlantic or Pacific or...
I think you even question, like, is this the island where the nuke goes off?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out... And again, in Apocalypse Now, or you mentioned, is it the island where Superman leaves Volcana at the end of Where There's Smoke? Like...
Oh my gosh.
Unclear as to where exactly this island is, or if it's wise to leave one giant ape in a colony with regular-sized animals or not. But hey, he did it! And
sure
that's
did.
where our episode ends. So, this is... Look, I'm not going to say this isn't, like, if it's fun and funny, it is. But it's so bizarre. And the whole... Like, it's just such a weird tonal shift from the sharp childhood trauma at the beginning to just, like... Titano frees a bunch of animals from the zoo at one point, and Superman just kind of leaves all those animals except for 2 lions. He captures the 2 lions, but doesn't, I don't think, he lets all the monkeys continue to run amok.
And, like, attack people.
Right. And yeah, so it's just a weird episode. I think everyone just does dumb stuff, especially Superman and Professor Hamilton in this episode. So it's a weird episode to score, because again, it's not fun. It's just so weird and dumb that I ended up settling on a 4 out of 10.
Wow, well, you were nicer than I was. I gave this a 2 out of 10.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I don't... The characters in this episode continue to just make terrible choices. We highlighted a lot of them.
Yes.
From the adults at the beginning of the episode, allowing their children to bond with this animal that they're going to rip away in a very traumatic fashion, to the decision to rip that animal away in a very traumatic fashion, to then allow them to witness what could very possibly have been a very additional traumatic experience. The best shots are the ones where they're like, he's going, like, Sam Lane literally says, like, he's going to fulfill his mission. And then they cut to him, and the monkey is just, like, screaming in terror, sitting inside this capsule that they're launching into space. Just, like, the decision-making by people, like you said, this professor and scientist and Superman are like, hey, you know what we should do with this animal who just inexplicably has survived in space for 20 years? Let's send him home to hang out with Lois. Right. Lois knows him. Like, not like, hey, we should keep Lois here at Star Labs to observe, like, what's going on. No, we're gonna let this chimpanzee leave our premises, and knowing, again, this is season 2 of Superman. There have been a lot of crazy things that have happened thus far, including aliens and black holes and other people from Krypton and other dimensions. Like, this isn't like so you have to, like, that didn't raise any alarms when this chimpanzee has been in space for 20 years and survived without any food, water, or, like... Oh, man. And then, like, we get the police who are, like, dumb and shooting them with these tiny darts. And then we get, like, it's like you said, like, Superman letting the rest of the animals go free because that's how he has to pursue them. Even, like, the people at the zoo, like... He's a 2.5 story tall monkey, and he sneaks up on them. Like, how is that possible? These people...
because every other time he's walking, you hear this doom, like these big sound effects, and the camera shakes a little bit when he walks, and yet somehow he, again, another like monster movie trope, I guess, but.
He's able to sneak up on these people, and they're not like, they don't notice him.
Right.
I don't know. And then the way that it ends, it's like, oh, it's cute. Like, oh, you calm the monster's soul by playing this, like, old, like, rights-free music that they were allowed to use for this episode. Like, okay, that's fine. But then we're just going to take him and leave him on a island, and we're never going to see him in the DCAU again. How is there not a crossover where Gorilla Grodd, like, manipulates and mind controls Titano?
Oh, man. That's such an obvious one. I can't believe they ever did it.
That's slam dunk in here. Even in a tie-in comic or something. Like, that's a slam dunk.
For sure. That's... Maybe one day. Maybe we'll get Superman: The Adventures Continue one day, and we'll get to to live out that story.
You hear us... Like, that was the other thing. Like... I don't know. I would not have written the episode this way. It's very goofy, but it's not Paul Dini goofy. Like we talked about, I think you made a very good point at the beginning. Like, we had a 5th dimensional imp that bent the, like, rules because he's like a Looney Tune and he lives outside of, like, the normal rules.
Right.
This, we're supposed to believe, is just a regular chimpanzee that was affected by gas that allows him to grow in size, but doesn't make everybody else around him dumb.
Right.
Like, it doesn't make everybody else around him make terrible choices.
Right.
Superman's in somewhat super wimp mode, and he's caught off guard by the fact that the giant chimpanzee goes to the Ferris wheel and rips it off, and, like, I don't know. I think this could have been far more interesting, even using a weird, like, giant animal trope. And it, like... I don't know.
Well, to your point, and we'll get to this in visuals, they don't even do, like, the obvious Kong homage where he's, like, climbing a building and Superman flies up to knock him off.
Right.
And then, like, has to catch him on the way down or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
that could have added something to it. There's not even, like, those tropes and homages to those. I mean, maybe at the end you have him end up on an island. I don't know if I'm not a King Kong expert, but obviously there's been follow-up movies in the last couple of years of King Kong being on his own island and Kong Island and all that stuff.
That's usually where the movie starts, is the humans go to the island and find Kong and then put him in chains and bring him back to the U.S. or whatever. But
more adults making brilliant decisions.
Yes, absolutely.
But
they would fit right in this episode.
They would. So I guess maybe that was a little cutesy little nod there. Instead of taking him from an island, they bring him to an island. At the end here, it's the reverse Kong. With that said, though, I did not like this episode at all. I felt like watching it the entire time, it was just super goofy and not in fun, enjoyable. Like I didn't have a lot of fun. I just laughed. I laughed at this episode instead of laughing with it.
I think that's fair.
And I think if they had changed the tone, like if the tone of it had been the tone sort of that we see in the apartment with Lois, like the entire time, instead of opening with that sort of traumatic separation and like you sort of develop this like, oh, I kind of feel bad for this chimpanzee who didn't do anything that's being shipped into space. But then he's kind of made the villain.
Right.
Through no fault of his own. Like he's just kind of like a mindless monster.
Right, well, to your point, there's no other villain like controlling him, making him do this. He's just like kind of walking around, like trying to figure stuff out for himself.
He's just he's wreaking havoc. He's letting the monkeys go free because they also are like caught behind bars. There's this sequence where he sees something at this Coney Island or whatever it is stand in that looks like the spaceship, so he's going to destroy that. That's kind of how he ends up going after this Ferris wheel. So I don't know. I just really did not enjoy this episode at all.
That's fair enough. I think we can move to individuals.
I think so too. Absolutely. Liam, visual and animation. Visually, it is an interesting episode at least. We get giant chimpanzees and lions and monkeys and no bears, but I think most of the action and interesting visuals for me at least came in the sort of the final sequence. What stood out for you?
As far as like action beats, there's, as you mentioned, there's this final fight, which we'll get to. I'll let you talk about that in a moment. And then the only other really action point other than Superman breaking some asteroids is when the bacteria grow and start attacking the scientists, and he has to, which really isn't much of a fight. He just kind of like knocks them back. They all fall on him. He does the classic Superman spin to knock them all down, and then Professor Hamilton freezes them with a fire extinguisher. So there's not a lot of like traditional action. Like everybody's for the most part on model, I think. We get some, again, more alternate clothing in this week's episode for Lois.
Casual Lois in like yoga pants and a t-shirt.
Absolutely. And, but other than that final fight, like, there's nothing wrong with it, but there's not a lot of, like, spectacular action. There's, like Titano goes to swat at Superman, and he kind of grabs the hand and pulls it back, and I guess some of the parts where Superman's actually like physically wrestling with Titano is cool, but it's a very it's not, like I said, nothing bad, but nothing particularly great stood out to me either.
I think the final fight sequence on the whatever it was, fairground, Coney Island, amusement park, whatever it is, wherever they were. That has the most interesting visuals, of course, fighting in a different setting there. I think the physical battle between Superman and a giant chimpanzee is interesting. There is a spot, like you said, where he sort of swats Superman away as he's flying towards him. That was a cool shot. That's kind of when Superman gets up and tells Lois that her monkey friend is going down. So Superman kind of getting his tail kicked by this giant chimpanzee. He falls into a house of mirrors, and Superman's kind of standing there dazed, and you see the reflection in the mirror. You see Titano's foot sort of coming towards him as he's going to stomp on Superman. So you kind of see the reflection in the mirrors as Superman. You're looking at Superman there. I thought that was an interesting little visual. Other than that, other than maybe a brief visual nod, as you mentioned, Superman in the beginning scene is destroying some asteroids. I feel like there was a bit of an homage to the old Asteroids video game in that too. But other than that, there wasn't a whole lot I felt like there was super interesting. With the transformation, as Titano grows, he sort of gets this glow around him that matches this blue gas that I guess was responsible for his growth. So he sort of shakes and starts to grow as to show the transformation. I think that's done well. We've talked about various different types of transformations and how sometimes that can take away from the character. I don't think that did this week, but other than that, not a whole bunch of things here to talk about.
Yeah, I just keep coming back to that. There's nothing wrong with it. Maybe if there was a more like dramatic transformation, but it's almost kind of like Apache Chief on Super Friends or something.
Correct.
It's just like you said. There's that slight blue light, and then he just gets bigger. It doesn't seem like it's like this dramatic physical transformation for him.
Correct.
Yeah, there's nothing really besides what we've already talked about stands out to me. Like I said, I think everything's fine. But I ended up settling on a 6 out of 10 for visuals this week.
Yeah, I gave it the exact same score, 6 out of 10. For an episode featuring a giant chimpanzee, I feel like there could have been a lot, especially one that ends up at a amusement park. There could have been a lot more fun to be had. You incorporate a giant, him using a roller coaster as a weapon, or any of the things that you could think there. They wrestle over this Ferris wheel for a good bit of that final battle scene too. It's there's not a lot interesting that happens. Lois and Jimmy end up falling into a display or like their game that also had a bunch of monkeys, and they have to try and find Beppo, who in and of himself is an Easter egg also, of course.
Yes.
As we mentioned a couple weeks ago, Beppo the super monkey was one of those Silver Age Kryptonian pets of Superman. In this case, in the DCAU, he's the name of the stuffed animal that plays Pop Goes the Weasel that seems to calm Titano down. But other than that, there's not a lot for a setting that could have been very interesting, and for a villain that you have the opportunity to sort of take, or a foil, maybe not straight up villain, but a foil that you could have really taken advantage of and done a lot of interesting visual things to. It seems like that there was a little bit lacking in this episode.
Yeah, I think the only other visual note I had was at one point Superman gets knocked into like the test of strength booth with the hammers and he gets knocked into it, and the little bar goes all the way to the top and hits the bell so hard the bell flies off and boinks Superman in the head like it's like a Looney Tunes cartoon. But
right.
It's just a strange episode, and again, nothing terrible with the visual. I think what's there is fine, but yeah, nothing spectacular.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next category, Liam, which is music. We mentioned last week that last week's episode was not featured on the soundtrack for Superman the Animated Series in the limited amount of soundtrack that they have released. This week's episode did happen to be released on the soundtrack, and Lolita Ritmanis again is responsible for the music for this week's episode. And I think there wasn't a standout piece from listening through to these songs in isolation. I think there are some elements, though, that you appreciated, that I appreciated, that you could really tell that she was trying to get some story out of the music.
Yeah, I would say music's probably the best part of the episode. It is more of a general theme. Like Titano doesn't have his own necessarily like villain theme that plays the way like Metallo or somebody does, but.
Sure.
But there's a lot of like I guess what would be like conga, like what would be considered like used as native drums or jungle-esque music.
Sure, percussion.
Yeah, a lot of percussion, especially once Titano has grown to this massive size when he's down by the docks. That whole initial fight scene where he's interacting with Bibbo and the cops, and then Superman shows up. It's that sort of extra added percussion on top of the your regular action strings and everything you might expect in a normal Superman episode. That did make it stand out as a little more unique than just your average episode, so I did appreciate that. I thought she did a great job conducting the orchestra there.
Yeah. I think the pieces really do shine more in isolation. Being able to have these pieces to be able to go to and check them out. So kudos to WB and La La Land for dropping that episode, at least on this collection. So being able to hear it in isolation certainly added to it, and certainly drew out more of that percussion, and listening to multiple pieces, you can hear that same percussion, those conga drums played in various different ways in various different pieces. So having a running theme throughout the episode, even if there wasn't one piece that was like, okay, this is the Titano theme, there is that theme that sort of runs through in the style of music that she went for in composing. So I think music is good. It's not great. It's good. It definitely benefits from being able to hear it in isolation. For sure. So I went ahead and gave music a 7 out of 10. What about you?
And yep, I am right there with you with the same exact score, that being another 7 out of 10.
Nice. All right, Liam, let's move on to voice acting. Voice acting this week, really it's just a lot of regulars. We do have a few people that guest star, one or two in minor roles that we were excited to see play their part. Let's talk about this week's voice cast.
Yeah, so obviously we have our regulars. We have David Kaufman as Jimmy. We have Victor Brandt as Professor Hamilton, the real Professor Hamilton, not that imposter that shows up on Justice League.
That's right.
We have, of course, Dana Delaney as Lois and Tim Daly as Superman, who we'll get to more in the end. Then, we have a bunch of sort of minor parts for guest actors. We have Dean Jones as General Sam Lane, who, as we mentioned, the actor doesn't do anything wrong, but the character is terrible. We do have Joseph Bologna and Joanna Cassidy as Turpin and Maggie Sawyer.
She is not... I mean, she doesn't have a lot to do in this episode, but I thought that the lines that she delivered were not good.
Criminals, madmen, and aliens we can handle, but this...
Don't sweat it, Maggie. These babies will put anything to sleep. Nighty-night, monkey boy.
That was a short nap.
Yeah, I don't know if there's wasn't time for pickups, and she was just they only had her in the studio for a short time, and she just had a couple lines, and they just went with what they had, or what happened there. But yeah, she's not. From
my recollection, it's very out of character for her. Typically she plays off of Joseph Bologna very well, and it felt very robotic. And for the scene, as they're sort of interacting with this giant chimpanzee, you would call probably for a little bit more emotion that I felt like was delivered. So not her finest performance, in my opinion.
Agreed. And then I mentioned we have a mother-daughter team doing voice acting here. We have Pat Music, I apologize if I'm botching that, just voicing some minor background characters. But her daughter is a woman by the name of Mae Whitman, who of course was just a young girl at the time, voicing young Lois Lane. Mae Whitman, of course, who would be known as Anne from Arrested Development.
Her?
Well, she's great in that. She's also in Scott Pilgrim and a bunch of other stuff. A lot of associated nerd projects. Also voices Wonder Girl on the Young Justice series now. So does a lot of great voice acting as well. And we also have Aria Curzon. This is Lucy Lane's, also her only appearance in the series. We hear her mentioned once or twice otherwise, but so we have a couple minor cameos there. But then, I guess as far as our main players, other than that one scene of, and of course I would be remiss not to mention Brad Garrett briefly as Bibbo Bibowski.
He was the highlight of the episode for me.
Yes, when he climbs up on a box and whacks Titano with a newspaper.
He's the only character that I feel like acts like his character in this episode.
Yes.
right, Cheetah. You asked for it. Bad monkey. Bad monkey.
I would agree with that. Yeah, and so for our main actors, we have Tim Daly as Superman, of course, and Dana Delaney as Lois. They're doing their best with what they're given, I think. I actually think Tim Daly, from a delivery standpoint, is pretty good in this episode.
He shows a lot of emotion and frustration being
Right.
a guy who's irritated that this giant monkey is running around.
Yes, but it's so preposterous, and again, the whole setup being... And again, Lois, Dana Delaney gets to be kind of funny in this episode, especially when Titano's jumping around her apartment, and then... when she shouts at Superman, don't hurt him, he's just a baby, and Jimmy kind of gives her a look when she says it. I think that's funny. Like, she is funny in this episode. It's just, again, the dramatic shifts in tone and the characters just doing a lot of dumb stuff. It's not anyone in the voice cast's fault, but I do feel that brought my score down just a tad, and I settled on a 6 out of 10 for voice acting.
There you go. And I also gave it the exact same score, 6 out of 10. So we have another identical score there. But I think Dana Delaney, again, as we discussed, on last week's episode, she does a fine job. She's awesome. She's in the discussion, certainly, for the best of the voice actors in DCAU history. So, this one does require a little bit more, her lines are a little bit more comedic when she's at the spa and she's on the phone with Jimmy, and, they're talking back and forth there. That she has some funny lines, some obliviously funny lines there. And, she ultimately has to show compassion for this gigantic chimpanzee, I guess. So she gets to play the damsel in distress to King Kong, I guess. Glad they didn't go that route, though, where they didn't fall into the trap of just doing a straight King Kong ripoff.
Despite Victor Brandt as Professor Hamilton telling her to resume her relationship with the monkey, whatever the hell that means.
Why would you put it that way? Speaking of Arrested Development, maybe Professor Hamilton needs to carry a tape recorder around to hear how he says things.
Anyway. There's got to be a better way to say that. Is our point
exactly?
But yeah, it's like I said, it's nobody in the voice cast's fault. It's same as what we talked about in visuals. It's just such a wacky, weird, and dumb episode that it's just everybody did their best, but their best wasn't quite good enough.
That is correct. All right, Liam. Well, that means it is time to tally up our final scores here for this week's episode. Adding everything up together, I come up with a surprisingly high 21 out of 40. What about you?
And shockingly, I'm even higher than you. I have a 23 out of 40, thanks to the one category where we had even slight disagreement being plot, my score being a little bit stronger than yours, but... as we jump into rewatchability here, I'm going to go ahead and say this is one you can skip.
This is one, and again, we mentioned it last week. We love the Tim Talk guys.
Yes.
This is one that they threw up. Admittedly, I think Cameron was the one who brought it up, said that he wasn't... or he knew that some people would look at him sideways for bringing it up. But he brought up this episode as we were discussing... the top 5 DCAU episodes on the Watchtower Database's anniversary special a few months back.
That's right.
And I definitely remember furrowing my brow and being a little confused because I didn't remember this episode being one that stood out as being a great one, but I was willing to let it slide. At this point, I would love to have a bonus episode where we debate the values and laurels of this episode being stricken from the history books of the DCAU, because there is no reason for this episode to exist.
Well, that's right. As we mentioned, Titano never reappears in anything, not even to team up with Grodd, despite that just being money left on the table as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I don't really see a reason. I believe some of Cameron's justification was because it showed us a different side of Lois.
Sure.
Which, I guess, but like, I've never thought Lois wasn't like compassionate and nice. Like, she has a hard edge to her, and certainly when she's dealing with Clark or whoever, she has a very sarcastic tone. But like, there's never been a time where I thought she wasn't like a good, nice person. So.
Sure. And listen, I say that all in jest. I'm not going to...
Of course.
Cameron can like whatever he likes. That's fine.
People are allowed to disagree.
That's right. And if you like this episode, we would love to hear your explanation for why you like this episode. You know, some of it might be nostalgia reasons, and that's perfectly acceptable. You may really enjoy the storytelling and the goofiness and the zaniness and the fact that it's sort of out of, you know, left field. We had a conversation earlier in the month when we reviewed Mixes Pixelated that somebody commented that they hated that episode, and obviously we loved that episode.
Yeah.
So different strokes for different folks. I don't see this being an episode that I ever need to watch again, not even if they release it on remastered, hopefully coming out this year for the 25th anniversary of Superman. But there is no long-term effects to it. I don't feel that it necessarily gives you more of an insight to any character other than learning that Lois was able to overcome a significant amount of childhood trauma to be where she is today. And
it's amazing she speaks to her father at all.
What a jerk. And now that we know that Mayor Hill has competition for worst dad in DCAU history. So there we go. That's the only reason why I think this episode would provide any sort of value or rewatchability.
Yeah, this is a skip. This is a definite skip.
Yep, this is one you can put in the... I don't even know that it's one that... You know, we always talk about this being a children's cartoon. I guess the visual of Superman versus a giant chimpanzee is funny or interesting.
I guess.
I mean, but to me, there's more... it's more terrifying than anything.
I was going to say, well, as someone who was like 6 or 7... no, this was 97, so not even that old.
Right.
I was 4 when this... almost about to turn 5 when this episode debuted. Like, this episode didn't interest me when I was that age, much less, as a 27-year-old man, as I sit here now. So it's just not it's like I said, for whatever reason, this one it wasn't in heavy rotation in repeats from my memory. So maybe it just doesn't have that nostalgia for us the way some other episodes might. But yeah, I think this is a definite skip, at least for you and I, Cal.
Agreed. All right, Liam, well, that will begin to wrap this week's episode up. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. As we said, if you have feedback for us, do us a favor. Tweet at us at DCAU Review. Liam runs our Twitter page, as I always say. We love interacting with fans, even if your opinion differs from ours. We'd love to get feedback. What did we miss from this episode that maybe you value or maybe that you love that we didn't quite catch on this week's watch through? Let Liam know at DCAU Review. You can also follow us on Instagram at DCAU Review. You can also check out the entirety of the archives, every episode that we have covered thus far, all available at DCAUreview.com and streaming on your favorite podcast app. Speaking of, if you can, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. That helps us a lot. Helps with their algorithm. Tells them that people are interested in hearing it, and we'll move that up and allow people to see it more often. If you're looking to support the podcast, you can also check out our store, which is available at DCAUreview.com. Click on the little store link at the top of the page. That will take you, pick yourself up a shirt, a hat, a sweatshirt, a mug, something to support the podcast. We don't run commercials on our podcast for that very reason, because we don't like commercials either. Right. So, if you feel like we're doing a good job and you want to support us, go buy yourself a shirt, and then tweet us or tag us on Instagram in a picture wearing it. We'd love to see that too. Liam, this will bring us to the end of this episode, which means we're going to start talking about next week's episode, which I am excited to talk about because it won't be just us doing the review now, will it?
That's right. We're bringing in a ringer, folks.
That's right.
Next week, we will be reviewing another villain origin episode, that being Livewire, and coming along for the ride with us will be Nathan of Superman, the Animated Podcasts. Very excited. I believe, as I mentioned on our show a few months ago now, I went on to Nathan's show and we talked about the World's Finest together, and I had a blast with that, and I'm excited to have him back on our turf to to review an episode that he has previously covered in his show, but that you and I have not gone back to since we've started. So I think it'll be a fun time.
Absolutely. It's going to be great. You can check out his podcast. I know he's also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. So if you haven't listened to his episodes, love the way that he breaks down episodes. He's very analytical in the way that he goes through things as well. Very similar to what we do, but has his very own unique spin on it. Love his accent.
Easy listening, I like to call it.
Absolutely.
He's a smart guy, and he kind of goes through it scene by scene and does a great job with it.
Absolutely. So we're looking forward to reviewing that next week with him. But until then, I'm Cal.
And I'm Liam.
And we will talk to you on the very next episode of the DCAU Review.
Adios.